carried and raised his children alone while he built an empire, and as Maya listened, arms crossed tight around herself, she wanted to scream that it was too late, that apologies didn't buy back years of missed birthdays, sick nights, eviction notices, or the shame of standing in food pantry lines. But then the kid's bedroom door opened and 8-year-old Jordan and his twin sister Ava stepped out rubbing their eyes, and when Ethan knelt down and smiled gently at them, introducing himself, simply as a friend of your mom's. Something inside Maya cracked because she saw curiosity instead of fear in her children's eyes, and later that morning, after the kids left for school with full stomachs and excitement about pancakes they couldn't stop talking about, Ethan sat across from Maya at the small kitchen table and said he wasn't there to take anything away, only to make things right, offering financial support, a better home, opportunities she'd never been able to give them. And Maya laughed bitterly because she knew money didn't erase abandonment, but over the following weeks, Ethan kept showing up. Not with grand gestures at first, but with consistency. Fixing the broken sink himself, helping Jordan with math homework, listening to Ava ramble about her drawings, and slowly, against her better judgment, Maya saw genuine regret in him. But the real twist came when Maya learned through a chance encounter at her cleaning job in a downtown office building that Ethan's sudden interest in his past wasn't entirely selfless, because a rival company was threatening to expose a long-buried scandal involving his identity change and alleged abandonment of a pregnant partner. And while Ethan denied that this was why he'd returned, doubt crept into Maya's heart as she confronted him. And Ethan admitted that while the threat was real, it hadn't forced him to care, it had only forced him to finally look. And just as Maya was beginning to believe in his intentions, disaster struck when Child Protective Services showed up at her door following an anonymous report claiming she was an unfit mother living beyond her means. A report clearly designed to intimidate her, and when Ethan offered to use his lawyers to make it disappear, Maya refused, standing firm in her dignity, determined not to owe him or anyone else her motherhood. And it was during the court proceedings that the truth came out. Ethan had not abandoned her all those years ago by choice, but because his wealthy father had paid off the university, erased his records, and forcibly sent him overseas after threatening Maya's safety. A secret Ethan had been too ashamed and afraid to uncover until now, and the revelation shattered Maya's long-held anger even as it reopened old wounds. But the final betrayal came when she discovered that Ethan's board of directors planned to use her and the children as a publicity shield, pushing him to publicly acknowledge them to boost his image while quietly pressuring Maya to sign non-disclosure agreements. And this time, Ethan chose differently, resigning as CEO in a move that shocked the business world, choosing his children over power. And in the aftermath, as media storms raged and fortunes shifted, Maya found herself standing at a crossroads, realizing that while she could never get back what was lost, she could choose what came next. And months later, in a modest but warm home paid for not by guilt but by partnership, Maya watched Ethan burn pancakes while the kids laughed, realizing that life didn't always give happy beginnings. But sometimes, just sometimes, it gave second chances forged through pain, truth, and courage. And she finally understood that the moment she woke up and found the CEO making breakfast wasn't the miracle. The miracle was that she had survived long enough to demand more than apologies and had built a life strong enough to decide whether to let someone back into it. And as the sun rose higher that day, Maya knew her story wasn't about a man who came back rich, but about a woman who had never been poor in strength, even when the world tried to break her. Before this story even begins, stop scrolling for 2 seconds. If you believe wisdom has no age, wealth has no face, and America still runs on quiet resilience, hit subscribe right now, because stories like this don't just entertain, they remind us who we are. And now here's the story you won't forget. "I just want to check my balance," said the 90-year-old black woman, her voice calm, almost apologetic, as she stepped up to the marble counter of the downtown bank on a Tuesday morning that smelled faintly of polished floors and impatience. And the millionaire behind her laughed, not loudly at first, just enough to be noticed. A dismissive chuckle wrapped in expensive cologne and entitlement. The kind of laugh that said he had already decided who mattered and who didn't, because the woman, small-framed, slightly bent at the shoulders, dressed in a faded blue coat with carefully sewn buttons and sensible shoes, looked like someone time had passed by, someone who counted coins in jars and clipped coupons, not someone who belonged in a bank where glass offices were named after donors. And the teller, A young man barely out of college with a tight smile and rehearsed politeness, asked for her card and ID while glancing nervously at the growing line, and the millionaire, whose name was Grant Whitmore and whose net worth was plastered across local business magazines, leaned back and checked his watch, sighing dramatically, muttering something about how some people should use ATMs, and the old woman, whose name was Evelyn Carter, smiled softly as if she had heard worse in her 90 years, because she had lived through segregated water fountains, through nights when sirens meant danger, through decades when being quiet was survival, and she handed over a worn debit card that looked older than the teller, who typed in the number, blinked once, typed again, frowned, adjusted his glasses, and said, "Ma'am, one moment please." And that was when Grant laughed louder, shaking his head, saying, "Let me guess, overdraft," drawing a few snickers from the line. But Evelyn didn't flinch, because flinching had never fed her children, and the teller's face slowly drained of color as the screen refreshed, because the balance wasn't negative, wasn't small, wasn't even reasonable, and he whispered, "Sir, I think you should come see this," to the branch manager, a woman in her 40s who walked over briskly, ready to smooth over another small account inconvenience, until she saw the screen, until she saw the commas, until she saw the number that made her inhale sharply and straighten her blazer, as if standing taller could prepare her for what she was seeing, because Evelyn Carter's account balance sat quietly at $47,892,114.63, and the bank suddenly felt very quiet, as if the air itself was listening, and Grant's laugh died mid-breath, his smile freezing as he leaned forward involuntarily, saying, "That's not possible," because his world made sense only if power was visible, loud, expensive, and Evelyn didn't look like his definition of rich, and the manager cleared her throat and said, "Miss Carter, would you like to step into my office?" With a tone usually reserved for celebrities or CEOs, and Evelyn nodded, turning slightly, and for just a second her eyes met Grant's, and there was no triumph there, no smugness, just a deep, knowing calm that unsettled him more than anger ever could, and as she walked past him, he caught the faint scent of lavender, the same scent his grandmother used to wear before she died broke and bitter, and something twisted uncomfortably in his chest, because Evelyn's story did not begin in that bank. It began in 1933 in rural Mississippi, where her father taught her numbers at the kitchen table by candlelight because the local school didn't bother with black children beyond the basics, and where her mother taught her the value of patience, and where Evelyn learned early that the world would underestimate her and that she could either accept that or use it, and she chose the latter, working as a domestic worker by 16, saving every dollar in envelopes hidden beneath floorboards, moving north during the Great Migration with nothing but a suitcase and a stubborn belief that time would reward discipline. And she married a quiet man named Henry Carter who fixed radios and dreamed of owning a shop, and together they bought a small building in Detroit in the 1950s when banks wouldn't lend to black families but desperation sold cheap, and when riots